When looking at stories of the past, at people, places, things, and events, it's important to ask ourselves whose stories get recorded and told, and whose may be forgotten. The forgotten are often those stories that were deemed less important or dangerous to the image of those recording history at the time. But even with limited information, we can dig deeper to discover previously untold stories. This is the work that historians at the Moravian Archives in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, are doing to learn about the enslaved, indigenous, and indentured persons of Salem. Most recently, this work has led to the story we want to talk about today, the life of Christina Bass. Christina's story has mostly been mentioned as a supplementary, ancillary footnote in the life of her husband, Peter Oliver, an enslaved man and member of the Moravian Church in Salem, who eventually bought his own freedom. His story is well documented and retold by archival historians. Scholars' work in unveiling Peter's story has prompted an increased appreciation for his life and legacy. The Peter Oliver Pavilion Gallery, a project currently in progress, will serve to honor his accomplishments and legacy in the community.
The discovery of Christina Bass's history has been a true place of momentum for what the Peter Oliver Pavilion site will be, as well as the flourishing of a story of a man and a woman and their descendants. All of the Christina Bass history came down to one document, discovering the marriage document and the right dates. Oftentimes, we know history through the mail because they were the landowners, they owned businesses, they were the money provider for the family, they farmed. Women traditionally didn't have a source of income that was their own. They didn't necessarily have a trade that was their own. Right now in the Christina Bass story, we have found an incredible amount of rich history that is unfathomable for a female descendant.
To begin, Christina came out of one of the largest native families in the area during this time, the Nansemond descended Basses. The Basses owned vast quantities of land in Northampton County and later Granville County and Halifax County. Ultimately, she is the result of 160 years of Nansemond survival, intermarriage, and deliberate landholding. Tracing Christina's ancestry back a few generations leads to Elizabeth Nansemond, her third great-great-grandmother, and her Englishman husband, John Bass. John and Elizabeth lived in Norfolk County, Virginia. Their descendants lived in the English colonial community, first in Virginia and then moving into North Carolina as colonization increased in areas of Nansemond land. In Granville County, North Carolina, Benjamin Bass Sr. and his son, Benjamin Bass Jr., amassed almost 600 acres of land in the 18th century. Here, the Basses formed tight kinship circles with a few other families, including the Mitchells, Andersons, and Pettifords. These families purchased large amounts of land and kept their property within Nansemond-descended families for generations. Christina, originally called Grace until after her marriage, was born to Benjamin Bass Jr. and Millie Pettiford in 1786. Benjamin Bass Jr. purchased 119 acres on Falling Creek in Halifax County in 1799, which he divided into lots of 17 acres among 7 children, including Christina, before he died in 1800. Christina's inheritance and ownership of land as a woman at the time was pretty remarkable, considering the recent abolishment of the practice of primogeniture and inheritance laws, where the land was passed down by a father to the eldest son. Still, she retained her ownership of the property, which was passed down to her until years later when she sold her 17 acres in Halifax County to John Richardson in 1808. After her father's death, the newly orphaned Christina was apprenticed to a man named James Downey as a weaver in 1801. Also in 1801, Peter Oliver from Salem, North Carolina, went to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania in pursuit of a wife.
Christina Bass and Peter Oliver get married in 1802. And I think that it's possible that they met when he was on his way to Bethlehem or coming back. She was from Halifax County. And from what we can see where she lived, it looks like she would have been on the crossroads going here and back to Edenton. So I think it's very possible that Peter Oliver met her somewhere along his journey.
Christina married Peter Oliver in 1802, and they lived on a leased farm. The records of her marriage bring up a couple of interesting points. Firstly, in the 1802 Salem diary, Christina is referred to as a mulatto, meaning that she was incorrectly racially identified by the community as half-Black rather than Indigenous. Secondly, according to her marriage license, Christina was 18 when she married a 35-year-old Peter. However, her recently discovered birth certificate indicates that she was actually around 15.
I think that there's an opportunity there to uncover more, and I'm wondering if that's why she changed her name, and if the reason why her age changes is because she was lying about her age, because she was supposed to be indentured until she was 18. I think that part of this is that she wanted to get away, and her pursuit of freedom was through Peter Oliver, who had also recently freed himself.
During their marriage, Christina gave birth to 6 children total, but only 3 of them lived past infancy. The names of their surviving children were Joseph, Israel, and Nancy. In 1810, Peter Oliver passed away, and Christina was allowed to remain on the farm and raise their very young children.
As a widow with 3 children, how was she to survive without a community coming and wrapping around her? I think that this was an impossibility. When the community responded to her passing of her husband, was it wrapped in love? Was it wrapped in care? Or did she experience one trauma after another?
In 1811, Christina began a relationship with an enslaved man named John Emanuel. The Moravian Church disapproved of this relationship, refusing to let them marry and eventually expelling Christina from the church and kicking her off the land in February of 1812 while she was pregnant with John's child. Israel, Joseph, and Nancy were taken from her and placed in the homes of members of the Moravian Church. Christina and John's daughter, Maria, was born in October of 1811. She, like Christina's other children, was taken by the church and died at age 19 in Salem. There are some records that claim Christina had another child in 1813 after she had left Salem, but this information is not confirmed. One thing we do know is that all of her children, except Joseph, remained in Salem throughout their lives. So where did Christina go? This remains to be discovered.
I think that it's possible that she went somewhere nearby to a neighboring community and was living there for a brief period of time. But I think that it's also likely that she pursued living with her siblings or went back to her hometown. She has several living siblings. Some of them are located in Mecklenburg County, some of them are still in Halifax, and others venture as far away as Virginia. So I think it's possible that she could have gone to her family, or she could have stayed here for a little while and then moved later.
Why do her whereabouts become a mystery? It likely has to do with her intersectional identity and the unique space she occupies in history.
I think that Christina existing in this intersectional space is really interesting and fascinating for how we see her in the archives and in the documents and records. So she's listed as being a mulatterin in our German records here, which just means biracial black and white typically, with a feminization on the end. But in some of the other records that we found at the county archives and the state archives, she's listed as being Nansemond Indian. So I think that there's something really to say about how existing as a non-white woman at this time is really fascinating to see her here, to see her in land records, to see her everywhere else that we found her. But really, it does speak to why there's not as many records about her and errors in the records as well. Her not being a Moravian and being a woman is a limiting factor in all of this and where we can see her in the archives.
However, Christina may not be completely lost to time. Continuing to investigate and share her experiences ensures that Christina lives on, with or without records.
But I think that the most important thing is that we can find all of these pieces of information and they come up so randomly. I wasn't looking for Christina Bass's story when I found her hometown. I was looking for someone else's research request. And I think that over time, we'll find out more and more about them. And it's just a matter of getting researchers in to look at these things, about having people that are passionate about just uncovering more and finding things in different places. I think that it's just a matter of time before we find more.
Christina's story is important to tell, not only because of her connections to local history and a project honoring her husband. Her life gives us a glimpse into the experience of a young, mixed-race woman who persevered through tragedy and defied many of the limitations that were placed on her at the time.
I think that Christina Bass's story, as it relates to the Peter Oliver Pavilion and Gallery, is a critical component. I think that while we are making this space to celebrate a man who emancipated himself and lived an incredible life that was truly unique and left an incredible legacy here as well, Christina Bass's story is equally important, and I don't think that you could tell one without telling the other. And I truly believe that her story deserves to have a spotlight within this as well. And I don't think that one candle burning bright dims any other candle.